Okay, hi guys. So today we're doing it a little bit differently. We couldn't get the live broadcast last week because Miha was caught up in some things with the club. So we decided to do a spontaneous webinar, and we're going to broadcast it via YouTube afterwards. Miha Zvizej, he's a line player, pivot player with the Slovenian national team in Riba Esbjerg, but I'm going to get him to introduce himself shortly, a little bit more detail. And yeah, we're just going to try and freestyle this conversation about the pivot player. So Miha, welcome to the webinar. Great to have you on board.
Thank you. It's an honor. I was pretty happy that I was invited. In that it's right now. It's rarely that we talk about handball, so it's always nice to be on a show or a podcast like this.
It's great. It's great to have you, man. Thanks for making yourself available. So tell the audience how you your journey, how you got started in handball, and how you became a pivot player.
Well, basically, it was like everything started with my brother because he's 7 years older than me, and I was playing basketball. I just didn't grow enough, so I wasn't tall enough. So they just like the next logical thing was that I just consider handball, and I was around maybe 12, 13. Then I changed from the basketball to handball. Just basically it was because of my brother. And then of course I started in the outside position because I wanted to score goals, and I was like a left back. Well, that didn't work as planned, so I was moved to the line. So I think that the position of I don't even know how you call it. You call it line player or you call it pivot?
Yeah, both. Yeah, just both.
Well, in English, I'm used to line player, so probably I'm gonna use line player.
Sure.
But it's a normal transition because when you're technically not so good, or at least for 15, 20 years ago, it was like that. You move to the line, and then you could just start to work out physically, and you figure out how to score. So that was like the plan back then. The times and the style of game right now, it's a little bit different than 20 years ago. So.
Yeah. So was it a discussion between you and the coaches, or you and your parents, or something like that?
No, there was no discussion. They just sent me to the line. Nobody asked me anything. They just like they could see that now as a left back, I wouldn't do so good. So they just said, "You're a line player now." And then, of course, when you see some success as a kid, that's much better, and then you prefer that. So it was fun. It was fun.
Brilliant. So tell me about the journey from Slovenia. We just discussed briefly beforehand the different places you've played, and it sounds like a really nice, varied career across Europe. So tell us a little bit more about it.
Well, basically, I played one year of Champions League in Slovenia, and a year before that, I was national team. It was my first big tournament in Austria. I think it was like 10 years ago.
Yeah, 2010.
Yeah, so that was like the first time when I was like maybe introduced, if you can call it, like on an international level of handball. So I got a chance to play in Silkeborg here in Denmark. So after the season in Slovenia and after my first year in Champions League, I went to Denmark. I played 2 years here. Actually, the first day of handball training here, I broke my arm and I was out for the whole season. I had like a pretty bad operation, and I was surgery, and I was out for the whole season. So that's part of my career. It was pretty rough. So I played here 2 years. Then I moved to Toulouse. I played there 4 years, and then I changed to Montpellier. I played there 1 year and moved back to Denmark because my wife is Danish and my kids are half Danish, if you can call that. And we are now in our new home and playing here for this is the 4th season, I think. So yeah.
Brilliant. So really varied career through Denmark, Slovenia, and France, obviously. And you've been exposed to many different coaches in your career. I mean, this webinar series we've been running is predominantly aimed at coaches and trying to get them to help them develop some ideas and a way of working. Can you tell us a little bit about the things that you look for in a coach? You know, what do you consider to be a good coach, and how can they get the best from Miha in a training session or in a match?
Yeah, well, I had that discussion with my teammates about it. That you don't look for a coach who is perfect. You just look for the coach who has the less bad things, because it's so complicated to be a coach right now. You have 16 different players with 16 different egos, and you just can't fit into a profile that you say you're just perfect. So it's I really try to take as much good things as possible from different coaches and to try to build up my image of a perfect coach. But I think it's almost impossible. Even like one of my probably the coach who gave me the most, it was the I'm gonna say differently. Not the coach who gave me the most, but who in really short time impacted my career a lot. It was Milka Sederušić, and he's the guy who was the national coach in our national team. And in really short time, he was also a line player, and of course, probably one of the biggest names in handball. His tactics and perception of the game, it was unbelievable how his mind worked. So he had a huge impact on my career, and I respected him. But even a coach like him, he has of course the negative sides. That's normal. Like players, you don't have a perfect player, you don't have a perfect person. So it's really hard to say what's my perfect coach, who's the best coach.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. I really love that phrase about you look for the coach with less bad things, not necessarily the perfect coach. You mentioned about his tactical understanding and insight into the game. Can you maybe describe to us how he worked with you to help you develop your tactical skills?
Well, with him it was extremely easy to play, and it's extremely hard at the same time. Like physically, there was no question. It was extremely hard. But he made like your role perfectly clear, so it was no doubt how you should play that role. And you get like you as a young player back then, I had like no big decision making. I just got like 2-3 things through the assignments, and I had to do that. And if I did that right, then it was perfect. So it was pretty clear for me what I have to do. I wasn't confused, and that's perfect for a young guy who can play with that confidence, because I knew probably if I just do it as he says, I can't do anything wrong. So that was like, it was he gave me a lot of confidence.
That's great. That's great. The clarity, I think, is one of the main things that the players are looking for, so they can really understand what it is that they need to do, and there's clear criteria from the coach in terms of what success is.
And of course, probably that works best in young guys, because experienced guys, they don't want to be locked in. They want to improvise because they have so much experience. So it's that discussion. Is a guy like this the perfect coach? Probably it was the perfect coach for me back then.
Yes.
Then it's different from season to season, and as you mature and get older, you probably need a different approach. So.
Yeah, that's really interesting. A different coach for different ages and different levels of experience for sure. Tell us a little bit more about your particular role in defensive systems, or what your preferred defensive system is for you to play. Do you have anything specific that you like, that you're particularly fond of?
Last couple of seasons, of course, I can't say that that's like the Europe's top clubs, but still Danish league is pretty hard. So the defense we played works pretty well in Denmark, and it's like it's really hard to define what it is. It's a type of 3-2-1 and a blend of 5-1 defense. So it worked pretty well. So I always have to adjust my defense play because of my height and my speed. I can use speed, but I'm really low in height. So I have to compensate all the time. So if you play 6-0, I have to compensate that with my how high or how deep I go on the attacking player. And that's like the compromise. So that's probably the speed and my strength. I can use it best in like 5-1 or deeper defense.
Okay.
But I made a couple of adjustments last 4 or 5 years because I was forced to do it. We didn't have a guy who was bigger than me, so we had to do it like that way. But it's really hard because I know that if I was the coach and I had to pick me to play the 6-0 defense on the highest level, probably I wouldn't choose the guy like me who is not even over 2 meters in the middle.
Yeah.
I would use myself on different places, but I know my limitations and I try to work around them. And I think that's like right now, if I would go for a higher level handball, I would use a deeper defense like 5-1 or 3-1.
Okay, in this 3-2-1 system that you're playing, which role are you playing? Are you playing in the middle of the three at the back?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, yeah, that's my primary role.
Okay.
But then when we get the like 2 minute suspensions and we get then I try to just fill up the holes everywhere. But that's my primarily it's in the middle.
It's interesting that you're saying that that you're adapting. I mean, we know that in handball there's some defensive systems and strategies that height is really important for, where 2 meters is really crucial and stuff like that. But sometimes we have to adapt the way that we play the game depending on the qualities that we have, right?
Yeah, well, you have a lot of players, even on the top level, that are not that tall, but they can still play really good 6-0. They just adapted, so they don't play it like you have, for example, I don't know, like in old times you had Germany who didn't even go out because they had the height. Then you have like Hungary, they have the height, it depends. Then you have Norway who plays like with Mirhal in the middle also, and he's the guy like me, so they just adapt. They just go higher, they try to be aggressive. And then you have Spain who plays totally different. It's really hard. It's hard to call it like 6-0 and to just generalize for all the teams, because every team adjusts the defense as well, probably in every sport you have as they fit them best. So
yeah. So you're trying to fit the model to the players as opposed to trying to put more structure into the maybe the individuals need to be better. Sorry, how can I describe this? So the system needs to fit the players as opposed to the players fit the system.
Yeah,
so
and even now the handball is so, like, modern handball is so fast. And it's the players are so smart, or so it was like in all, like back then you could really play like physically, or you could just play like all the teams played the same thing. Now the players are so developed and so trained that you have to adapt almost every game. If you play 10 games in a row and you won the first game with 6-0 defense, it doesn't mean it's going to work the next time. So you have to adapt, because the attack is adapting also.
I love that. I was talking a couple of days ago to someone about creating creative defenders, defenders that can adapt into the moment and respond to the different cues all the time and not necessarily be restricted by a system. I think it's really...
Exactly. And like many years ago, you could just make natural selection of players, and you said, now you're not tall enough, we're gonna we don't need you here. But now it's like, oh, let me see what you can. Let me see you against this player. Let me see you against that team. So it's like, it developed in that direction, that you have to adjust everything.
Sure, like you say, it's adaptable. I'm really interested to move into the attacking aspect of it now. And I mentioned to you before, my role previously when I was a player was as a goalkeeper. So I'm always interested to know what the players are looking for when they're shooting. So how did you develop your shooting skills, your repertoire, and what are you looking at when you've received the ball and you're turning? What's going through your mind?
Well, like now it's more instinct, or I know what I want, what I'm going for. But I always try to talk with the goalkeeper from the team. Like, what do you expect me to do when I do this? And then I try to work around that, because I try to generalize the mind of goalkeeper also on the other teams. So it's like, I try to talk with goalkeepers. Really good tip for a line player. Sometimes it's really hard to take your side up, or to lift your head up so you can see everything. So I really try to look at the feet. One of the easiest things to remember is if the goalkeeper doesn't have the contact with the floor, it means that he cannot move forward or backwards. He could probably spread everything to the sides, but it's like you get the perception, okay, the depth, or his approach is not gonna change. So it's like that's, but a lot of times it's pretty instinctively. Like you can see the goalkeeper is falling into one side. You try to trick him. It happens so fast. You
Sure.
can only think when you have the time, and the line player sometimes they don't even have the time, and sometimes even the best shots doesn't work. It's you're so close that you just try to push the ball in the goal.
Sure. So, from a coaching perspective or a learning perspective, what was your favorite shooting practices? Can you describe anything that was that kind of stands out for you as a young player? Which was it? Was it more in the matches that you learned, or was it lots of specific training that was broken down?
Well, where from the background where I come from, especially Balkan and Slovenia, it was like you didn't have a lot of room to improve yourself, to improve your shot, because the most important, even on the practice, was to score. So you didn't even develop those skills. Like it's in Scandinavia, it's totally different. You start as a young guy to try to develop as many shots as possible, and then you try to reduce that to the most effective ones, and you have like a big repertoire. Um, that's of course changed now, but back then you couldn't throw a spin ball on training because the coach went crazy. So now it's like we had like a really narrow approach of shooting, comparing us to Scandinavian teams, or even Germans or even the French guys. But that's different now. So I always try to develop some tricky shots, some lobs, some spin balls. And yeah, that cost me sometimes also some playing time, but that's the way it is. I love to play it like that, and I love to use it. I never had a hard shot. That's what probably I'm so close to the goal.
Yeah.
But I realized pretty soon that the power of a line player or the power of a shot, it doesn't mean anything when you're so close to the goal.
Yeah. Yeah, the goalkeeper's are 3 meters away probably sometimes, and you don't need to shoot it that hard to get it past them.
Yeah, and sometimes even the ugliest spin balls even the spin balls that don't spin at all are the best shots. So it looks ugly, but you can score. So
yeah, and that's the most important thing. So, do you think your shooting has you had a lot of chance to develop your shooting as you got older? Then, so do you think your technique has improved as you got older, or?
Yeah, I would say so. Definitely. I don't know if it's technique or just confidence. That some of the weirdest or some of the maybe laziest, if you can call that, shots work, and I don't use them because I try to be fancy. I just use them because I know they work.
Yeah.
So it was hard to realize. As a young guy, you're always afraid of making a mistake, and then you realize that you're gonna do a mistake no matter what, even if you try to shoot as hard as possible. And it's better than you do something good for the spectators too.
Yeah. Have you got some kids in the background there?
Yeah, probably two. Yeah, it's we call it a gang members, two gang members running around.
That's okay. So we're looking at obviously the pivot position, but of course this doesn't happen in isolation. So talk us through the backcourt players, how they can help you achieve, helping them create space for their breakthroughs and stuff like that. What do you look for in the backcourt players you work with?
That's the one thing Nurka was extremely good at. It's the position of the back players considering the position of the line player. So you're never parallel to each other. Every ball is diagonal. It's also the position of the hand when you pass the ball to the line player. It's the position of the defenders, and also the visual, how probably the side of a left back or a back, it's better when you watching from the side and you have like a wider how do you call it side,
yeah. Width and
width of like you have a wider angle to see what's happening. So he was always placing like instead of standing parallel and try to play directly on the line player, you can do that with really big guys who are just standing there lifting, like you have Bahidi in Hungary, just lifting the arm or his hand up, and you could just throw it in.
Yeah.
But otherwise, for small guys like me, you always have to come from the side and try to play me down there so I can create some space. Definitely, the position is wider. As if they can get the defender as far away from me as possible, the better position I can have, or I have more space to create a good position.
So that would require lots of speed, and the timing would have to be right, the width, the angle, the trajectory of the run to kind of pull that defender up.
The best players or the best backs in the world, they do that naturally. They don't even think about it. They just go like, they never stand in front of the defender. They go extremely wide or they go extremely in the middle, and that makes a job for a line player also a lot easier. And it creates that space because the defenders are always thinking, do we change the player we are guarding, or we are staying like that? So that movement of the back players are really important.
Tell me a little bit about the communication stuff with the playmaker or the other backs. You know, how did it start for you when you started as a pivot? Because I can imagine, and what I see here with young pivots is they're often not receiving the ball because the back players they're not so aware of the positioning and stuff like that. But it starts with communication, right?
Well, yeah, when I started, like I can say, for the first time when I started on the high level, that our playmaker was Ura Zorman. So it was one-way communication. He just said you have to be there, and I had to be there. That's like, we didn't have a two-stream communication. So usually it's like that. We just trust our back players. Even if we get a young guy, we try to guide them, and then just trust them because they made the decision for the whole team. And as a line player, I don't want to mix myself in the decision making, because it's like I don't even see the goal or the goalkeeper or the defense from the same perspective as they do. So yeah, I try to hold me out of it.
Hi.
That's a little guy. What's up? So yeah. Sorry for the interruption.
No problem. It's fine. We're always happy to have special cameo roles. So we're talking about the actual vision of the back players being so important to what happens with the play and how that affects your role. And before we jumped onto the call, we were talking about how the role has changed as the pivot over the last, since your career started. So we've had some big changes, especially with things like 7 against 6 and stuff like that. So can you tell us about how your role has changed over the last 20 years?
Changed a lot, but it's like when I started as a player, it was already changing there. So it's not like I never played in like old school handball style of playing. So it's way more dynamic. The line players there are some exceptions, of course, but the line players are fast. They try to run even in fast breaks. You have you have almost line players that are just following there or just running beside their wing players. So it's like you have fast line players and a lot of line players that don't even play defense now. That's the minus. I would say that's the bad thing about that. It's like a lot of line players that they don't even play in defense because they're so specifically trying to play the offense so effectively that they don't even have the energy to play, or even physically they're not feeding the defense. That's pretty interesting for me.
That's really interesting, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I get even angry because it's just like, why don't you play defense? You should be physically the strongest guy on the field. But sometimes a lot of players, even on the top level, they don't play in defense. But that's the tactics also, because the coaches, they try to really spare the line player for the fights in the offense and take a maybe defense specialist in the defense.
That's interesting. So, yeah, the role is very physically demanding. When you guys are in attack, you're fighting a lot of the time. The energy is getting sapped out of you.
Yeah, and like back then, like years ago, you could just have like a big heavy guy who was just I don't think that works so good right now. Even though you have like exceptions, as I said, you have like really big, strong guys, but you still have to run. You still have to be in pretty good shape. You have like Ludovic Fabregas from Barcelona. He's a big guy, strong guy, but he can run. He's extremely fast for his size. So you don't have like really, really heavy players right now. It was one of the last big names was Aguinaldo, who was like a really big guy, but that's the exception. He was also, he's coming from the Spanish culture where Outliers was also like a big guy, technically extremely good. So yeah, it's way more dynamic right now. Even if you go from, for exception, like you have Ludovic, of course, from France, but then you have Germany. You have a smaller, faster, more athletic guys. Then you have, of course, almost all Scandinavian teams. They have like, Denmark. It's so it depends who is playing, but they have like the line players are getting smaller or more athletic. Like I think the all positions they got closer to some general athletic how to say shape.
Yeah, of course.
The wing players are getting stronger, and the line players are getting smaller and more athletic. So everything is coming together like a more all-around players.
More consistent in the shape and the physical attributes of the player. Yeah.
Well, it's also really hard to say because you can always find exceptions. They work really well, but in general, I think it's like that. Yeah, you have to be in shape. Now it's like if you can't run, it's really hard to play.
Sure. Yeah, you're always going to have the outliers like Crystal Pants. You know, he's always going to be. There's always going to be players that come through like that. But the sport has to cater more for the more kind of not normal, but the general athleticism. You know.
Well, you have this. You have physical specimens like him, and you have physical like this is crazy. But you get one or two maybe. So. Yeah, not a lot of players are like him.
Sure. So we spoke a little bit about the physical side of it, Miha. So tell me about the psychological side. Do you have over the years have you developed any psychological skills that you've been using in the game to keep you motivated? You know, in the long seasons and the traveling away with the national teams and stuff like that. Has there been any useful tools that you've picked up along the way?
Yeah, well, it's different from the club and the national team. Like in national team, you have this short, physically and mentally really demanding tournaments, or how do I call it? Is it? Yeah, well, meetings when you just meet for a couple of weeks and everything is training camps and everything is on the line. Really, like the stakes are going up extremely fast. So there was no problem for motivation there. And in clubs, at least for me, it was never a problem because it's your job. That's our living. So it's not like even when for me, it's really hard to go on vacation and say like I'm not going to do anything. It works like for 3-4 days, and then I just get my anxiety and I have to go out and run or do something. So it's like for me, the motivation was never a problem. Even if you're physically totally exhausted, I could always find something to do. So
yeah, that's interesting that you word it like that. That your anxiety makes you go and do that the exercise. You know,
it was. I remember really the World Cup in Spain 2003. Oh, it was not 2003, 2013.
Yeah,
no 13. Was it Spain? Doesn't even matter. It was so physically demanding that and mentally demanding that we couldn't feel anything till we got to the semifinals, and we couldn't feel anything. But as soon as the last game ended, it was like I couldn't walk for a week because it was totally, you know, the adrenaline was pumping. The whole team was sick. Like all the guys were sick, not in the same period, but it was like 2-3 guys every day. And you could still play, you could give everything, but as the last whistle blows, then your body just shut off, and you can feel that it's mentally and physically pretty demanding now.
Yeah, it's a hugely demanding sport when you're going away onto those training camps and to those tournaments where you're playing back to back, training back to back with matches, and then one day off maybe, and then back to it again.
Yeah, well, in the clubs when the seasons are so long and you've been with your national team, you play Champions League, and then you have like 2-3 games. It's of course it's physically and mentally demanding, but it's also like the best way to put it. Maybe it's annoying. It's really annoying. Like you don't want to like, oh come on, last 2 games, and you're just like counting down. Like 4 games to go, 3 games to go. But still, when you play the games, you don't feel that. It's just the time between the games. It's like because I'm not gonna make any progress the last 3 weeks. It's just like I have to be as good as less time because you don't have time to progress. So you just have to be healthy and just, especially if you play some games that don't mean anything.
Yeah.
Then it's really sometimes it's hard to motivate yourself.
Yeah, you
just
just have to keep that consistency.
Yeah, and just go through it and try to not get injured, but still perform pretty good. But that's the reality. I think every player feels the same way.
Sure. You mentioned the time in the World Championships in 2013. What are the highlights of your career so far?
Yeah, probably that's the highlight of my career. Yeah, that should be probably because just like the whole tournament there, it was pretty fun because we were like in and out of tournament. They just like you had no chance, and then we won one game, and then we won another game, and we played like pretty good games. We had hard groups, and then we got to Barcelona to play quarterfinals and semifinals. Yeah, for the quarterfinals against Russia, and it was like the half of the team was sick and tired and injured. But we made it through. So the whole like journey through that tournament was amazing, and I was there with my brother also. So that was like pretty fun tournament. But you have even in a short tournament like that or a short training camp, you have ups and downs. Like you have days where it's like amazing, and then you have a bad day, a bad game, and everything falls down. So it's just like it's a roller coaster always.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us a little bit about the season in Denmark. You told me you're back training now. So tell us about what's happening after all this break with COVID, and maybe what you're up to during the break as well.
Well, during the break, it was pretty much like physical stuff. I built my small home gym here, so I was just training here, running a little bit. I was doing some Jujitsu, so that's my another hobby. Otherwise, it's now from the new season. We just started last week. Everything's pretty normal. Nothing is really different. It doesn't feel different. It doesn't feel weird. So everything is normal. We are back on track. I think the whole team is in pretty good shape considering the long break, physically at least. And the next week we are starting with the first friendly games, and yeah, we will see how that goes because it's really hard to say where we are right now with the handball. It looks fine on trainings, but I don't know. I haven't seen myself on tape yet.
Okay. Miha, you mentioned then, which is really great, like you do Jujitsu as a hobby. How long have you been doing that for?
No, yeah, well, I changed. Just went like from before I tried myself in traditional Jiu-Jitsu for a short period of time, and it was like I would rather try grappling. So I was doing that now for a couple of months.
Okay.
And it went pretty. It was the best time to try it because I could train a lot. So I was like in the gym pretty much like every other day or every day sometimes. So it was that's a pretty like I fell in love with the sport. I think it's amazing.
Brilliant. I wonder if it from a physical perspective maybe there's anything transferable into the role as a pivot or indeed in defense.
Well, yeah, probably. It's different because you in Jiu-Jitsu like 95% of the time you're laying on the floor. But you have like some really good and nice. It's like we are always in training shoes when you run, and in Jiu-Jitsu on mats you're barefooted.
Yeah.
So it's like when you're barefoot, you can just work on your ankles. It's relatively safe. You can always step out when you're in submission. Or when you're getting submitted, so you can always step out. So and the flexibility, I would say flexibility and the core strength that you can definitely use.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Otherwise, well, it's hard to say. I haven't been doing that for many years, so I can't see any results right now.
No, I'm really interested in the idea of how other sports can contribute to be like a donor sport to your main sport. I came from a football background as a goalkeeper and transferred into handball, and we've seen it with many other players that have played other sports. You said yourself you transferred quite, people would consider 13 years old quite late to transfer into a sport to become a professional. Yeah.
It was definitely late.
Yeah, I just find it interesting that kind of transition. So we're going to wrap things up pretty soon, but before we go, can you give us maybe top tips for the young pivots that we've got developing here in England, or indeed over anywhere else that people are listening? What would you advise them to focus on?
Like on the really young players, they always try to, through social media, they try to contact me and say like, what should I do to gain weight? What should I do to put on some muscle? It's nothing. It's like, we don't have any like big secret, or we don't have a special program. It's really just get in shape, just work. And it's really, you have to be persistent, because it takes like not only months, it takes years. And if you don't see the results, just keep doing it, because that's the only, it's no secret to anything. You cannot, we don't have, even if you're a professional athlete on the highest level, you have no secrets. It's hard work, and it's really like, it's that simple. So they try to complicate stuff too much sometimes, the young players, and they try to focus on do some specific meal plans, or specific physical trainings. I would focus mostly on handball, because you can always start to work, or you always have the time, and as a young guy you always have the energy to invest also in the physical stuff. And so that will come with the hard work. Everything will come.
Yeah, definitely. The perseverance is where it's at, I suppose, especially with a position such as the pivot, when it's very physically demanding. The players have to continue with that.
If I had to say one thing to a young player, because I didn't have that, and I'm working really, really hard on it every day, it's the flexibility. We never set the focus on that, and then you get like, it helps so much with the injuries. It will help you to play better, to be more agile, stronger. You have the possibility to work much harder or much better. The quality in the gym is much better. So it's like flexibility. It's one thing that if you keep it from a young age, you will always benefit till you get older. I'm so far behind, and I really try to get now I'm over 30 years, and I try to get flexible, and it's really pain in the ass. And the progress is so slow. So it's like, I really envy the young guys who are coming to practices, how flexible they are, and they just have to keep that. And it's a one thing that we never set any focus on.
You're talking to someone that's always struggled with the flexibility too, so I really appreciate the comment.
No, because it's one part of physical shape. It's flexibility, and we don't set any focus on that. Like even the coaches, they totally forget about flexibility. We're in other sports, maybe not so much in basketball or football, but in other sports like individual sports, gymnastics, skiing, everything it's based on flexibility, or it's a big part of the training program they have. And we have absolutely, like, maybe we dedicate like 2 minutes a day when you just warm up a little bit and try to move your hands. That's it. But that's and even the best players in the world, they're doing that. So.
Yeah, it's true. Okay, so last question, Miha. What's the future hold for you? You'll be, hopefully get a few more years out of yourself as a player. But what next?
Well, after my handball career is done, we'll see. It's hard to say. Because my passion just flies from one thing to another. But probably I'm leaning to be like a physical coach. Okay. Or something like a physiotherapist. We'll see. I try to stay in handball or in elite sports in some way, but I don't see myself as a coach. My opinion is, as a line player, you're always missing an aspect of attacking, and I don't think like even my best or one of my favorite coaches was a line player. I don't see myself as a coach of a handball team. Maybe we'll see. You never know. Yeah, I'm too young to make these decisions.
No, you're right. You never know, but definitely understand your passion to stay involved in the sport once you've been in it for such a long time.
Because I also want to explore other sports. So it's like I don't want to be too locked in handball, because other sports also inspire me a lot. Especially I would love to like you said it yourself. I would love to take a lot of things from the sports that are more developed to handball, because I think a lot of things can transfer into handball. But the big problem in handball in general is the resources. You have to have the scientific team, you have to have the coaches that have the passion, and it costs a lot of money, and that's not the priority, especially right now. So yeah, to live only from that in handball, it's gonna be pretty hard. So that's why I'm keeping my doors open
keep the doors open, keep those options open. Listen, Miha, it's been a real pleasure speaking to you this evening. Thank you so much for taking the time out, especially with the kids running around and everything.
No problem. Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Great. So yeah, guys, we're going to post this onto YouTube. We'll send it out via our usual channels. And yeah, all the best for the season, Miha, and we'll catch up soon.
Thank you.
Cheers, mate. Bye bye.
Cheers.
Bye.